how to engage or re-engage in your journey of self-actualization. Recently, I made a video about the most important psychology book that I ever read, The Farther Reaches of Human Nature by Abraham Maslow. And I received multiple comments from people asking me to make a video talking about how to actually embark or re-engage in your journey of self-actualization. So a couple of different situations where a person potentially knows that they want to start moving towards self-actualization because it's a direction, it's not a binary on or off switch. You cannot just become self-actualized. It's a journey, it's a process. So people wanting to embark on their journey, or people noticing that they have been moving towards self-actualization, but somewhere along the way they got sidetracked. Today we are going to talk about how to engage or re-engage in your journey of self-actualization. And I know all of you want practical tips. Luckily for us, there is a section in in the chapter titled Self-Actualizing and Beyond, section called Behaviors Leading to Self-Actualization. So, luckily for us, we have some concrete things to list that Abraham Maslow left for us. But I want to give you a word of caution. Behaviors leading to self-actualization doesn't mean we will be discussing necessarily practical steps as you are used to receiving them from modern self-help books. There is a reason why just one page before talking about behaviors leading to self-actualization, Maslow says the therapist of the future will consider themselves as philosophical counselors. You have to keep in mind that Maslow was not part of the school of psychology that is behavioral psychology, that views humans, now with all due respect to benefits of behavioral psychology. It is a school of psychology that, to put it simply, may be a bit reductionistic how I'm going to explain it, but it does view humans as algorithms or machines to be decoded and their behavior changed. Maslow, humanistic psychology in general, that Maslow was a pioneer of, humanistic psychology, depth psychology, existential psychology, all view humans in a way deeper and more mysterious way than the school of behavioral psychology. So when we are talking about behaviors leading to self-actualization, some of you might be disappointed that it's not going to be as simple as the usual self-help book that you pick up at the airport bookstore that says, okay, here are 3 things to do and this is the secret to changing your life forever. It's a bit more complicated and a bit of a longer journey. So if the therapist of the future, as Maslow imagined it, and unfortunately I don't think it came to fruition, would consider themselves philosophical counselors, it would mean that we have to approach our journey in a philosophical way. It means that it's not just about the things that you do on a practical level. It's about your philosophical outlook on life or your philosophical attitude towards life. Now, let's get into these behaviors leading to self-actualization. The first one is something that I talk about pretty much every day and have talked about every day for the last couple of years, and that's the ability to immerse yourself fully into something. So the self-actualizing individual is able now to use the modern terms to focus deeply enough in order to become immersed into something. So Maslow says, first, self-actualization means experiencing fully, vividly, selflessly, with full concentration and total absorption. He goes on to describe the experience of full immersion in an activity, in a poem, a book, a game, a project, a person. He talks about it from his perspective in a way where the biggest obstacle is to relax people enough, relax psychologically, enough so that they can get immersed, to relax and to teach them to let go of social constraints, to let go of expectations of the society. But today, in order to immerse yourself in something, besides relaxing yourself psychologically, what we need to do is develop the ability to focus. Maslow absolutely touches throughout the book and throughout his works on the necessity of being able to focus, but not in a way that is appropriate to how we should speak of it today. Because Maslow didn't live in time of doom scrolling and endless swiping on dating apps and getting trapped in different rabbit holes of the internet that contribute nothing to your life. So the first behavior is being fully immersed in something, or being able to be immersed in different activities, experiences that contribute to your life and to your overall psychological, emotional, spiritual growth. Second, this could be one of the most impactful ideas in my life, actually, that I've gotten from a book. Let us think of life, I'm quoting, as a process of choices, one after another. At each point there is a progression choice and a regression choice. There may be a movement toward defense, toward safety, toward being afraid. But over on the other side, there is the growth choice. To make the growth choice instead of the fear choice a dozen times a day is to move a dozen times a day toward self-actualization. Self-actualization is an ongoing process. It means making each of the many single choices about whether to lie or to be honest, whether to steal or not to steal at a particular point. And it means to make each of these choices as a growth choice. This is movement towards self-actualization. Now, I want to just rewind to the second to last sentence. It means to make each of these choices as a growth choice. So we have to realize, okay, we are every single day, multiple times per day, faced with various choices that are either asking us to move through fear towards our growth or to retreat from fear. I mean, those are pretty much the two main options that you have. But to make the choice as a growth choice is what matters, because there are many people who say the truth out of fear. There are many people who do the quote-unquote objectively right thing out of fear. That's not a growth choice. So this is not me saying lie and steal. It's whatever you are doing, whatever you are choosing, are you choosing it as a growth choice? Are you moving through what you are afraid of? Forget about what society considers to be the more impressive choice or the right choice. Because we can imagine a person who goes bungee jumping and, let's say, goes bungee jumping, drives fast, lives an externally adventurous life out of fear. Fear of what? Fear of commitment. Fear of facing their own selves. Fear of facing their psyche. Fear of spending enough time with loved ones where they have to have uncomfortable conversations. So they embark on this externally adventurous life. That's what it means to look at the context of one's choices. You can look at someone who seems to be living a very normal, boring, mundane life. But maybe it's a life built on growth choices. Again, a growth choice to commit, a growth choice to reject a big opportunity, not because they're afraid of taking the risk, but because they know that for them, in the context of their life, in the context of who they are as an individual, the more scary thing is to stay committed to something that was already there for them. So, making the growth choice, moving through fear, but pausing enough to identify what it means for you. The last example I will give is for men out there listening. You could be, I love to use this example, and maybe it applies to ladies as well, but again, I'm talking from a perspective of a man. You're sitting in a cafe, and a couple of tables away there is a cute lady looking at you, giving you the look, maybe giving you signals to approach her. And you could say, well, yeah, the objective thing to do in that situation, the objective growth choice, is to push through resistance that every single man experiences, the resistance of being afraid and a bit nervous to approach a lady in a public space. So you could say that the obvious growth choice is to get up and approach. However, maybe you are supposed to honor the commitment that you have made to someone. Maybe the growth choice for you is to resist the temptation to engage in an interaction that you know you would not be pursuing anything meaningful with. So it's not what others consider risky, dangerous, impressive, scary, and then you go in that direction and it's the growth choice. It's what's the context of you and your life. Let's move on to the third thing. The talk of self-actualization implies that there is a self to be actualized. Okay, so this already is not a practical step, even though Maslow is supposedly listing behaviors leading to self-actualization. Already the third thing on the list is not a behavior. It's an attitude, it's a belief, it's a philosophical outlook on life. Believing that there is a self to be actualized. A human being is not a tabula rasa. This is how I'm pronouncing it. It's a Latin for empty sheet of paper. Not a lump of clay or plasticine. He or she is something which is already there. A human being is at minimum his temperament, his biochemical balances, and so on. There is a self, most importantly. And what I have sometimes, Maslow says, referred to as listening to the impulse voices means letting the self emerge. So listening to the impulse voices, that's what he calls our inner signals, means letting the self emerge. Most of us, most of the time, listen not to ourselves, but to mommy's interjected voice, or daddy's voice, or the voice of establishment, of the elders, of authority, or of tradition. So, we are not an empty, blank sheet of paper, as some philosophers and psychologists throughout history proposed. We do have an essence, states Maslow, and states humanistic psychology in general. And a lot of depth psychology says, yes, we do have an essence. We are not this piece of clay to be fully formed by the environment and our experiences. There is some essence in us. So that is the third, again, quote-unquote, behavior leading to self-actualization. Not actually behavior, philosophical outlook on life. Will you believe that there is an essence to you? Will you start guiding yourself with the belief that there are inner voices, that even if you are now at a point in your psychological development where you cannot trust yourself enough to recognize when the true self speaks, to put it that way, can you at least believe that you can move in a direction where the inner voice or voices become more and more clear? Can you believe that you can move in a direction where it becomes more possible and more easy for you to distinguish between the inauthentic inner voice and the authentic inner voice? That's the question. So if you want to make this into a practical step, sit with yourself. Sit with yourself once in a while and try to speak to yourself quite literally, and try to see if you do believe and if you can believe that there is an essence to you, an essence to be uncovered, a self that you need to allow to emerge. That was number 3. Number 4, when in doubt, be honest rather than not. I'm going to skip a couple of things and go to what I love, the part of honesty. Looking within oneself. So we are also building on every single one of these things from the list builds one on another. Okay, honesty, being honest rather than not, but with whom? First of all, with yourself. Looking within oneself for many of the answers implies taking responsibility. That is in itself a great step towards self-actualization. So what does this have to do with being honest? You have to be honest with yourself that you have the capacity to inquire with yourself, about yourself, what you believe, what is right for you, what is not right for you. To be honest with yourself means taking responsibility. And you see how this builds on the previous one, talking about the essence. Because the easiest cop-out ever is to say, I have no idea what is right for me. I have no idea what my authentic self is. I have no idea where is my growth choice. I have no idea what allows me to get immersed into an activity. I have no idea what are the activities that make me excited about life. If you don't have idea about anything that relates to you and your psychological, emotional, spiritual growth, that's a cop-out. I'm not saying that you have the answers for every single thing that I listed, but to say that you are in complete ignorance of what is here, I mean, I'm locating it here. Maybe you're locating it somewhere else, but what is in you? If you have no idea, supposedly, it's an excuse to act inauthentically. Or if you say, I don't believe there is such thing as full authenticity. Or the question, worst question, one of the worst questions, what is even a self? Now, are you seriously considering it from a philosophical perspective? Or are you using this, such a, it becomes such a throwaway statement, like, what is even a true self? Does a true self even exist? Are you seriously considering that as a philosophical project that you want to take on and answer, does a true self exist? Or are you using that as an excuse to not discover your true self? So being honest rather than not, if you want to be honest with others, it has to start with you being honest with yourself. And the ultimate point of honesty with yourself is to go back to step 3, recognizing there is an essence, and go back to step 2, which is making the growth choice rather than the fear choice. Each time one takes responsibility, this is an actualizing of the self, says Maslow. I have some notes here. Okay, 5th. We have talked so far, says Maslow, of experiencing without self-awareness, that is the full immersion, focus, making the growth choice rather than a fear choice, listening to the impulse voices, your essence, and of being honest and taking responsibility. All these are steps towards self-actualization, and all of them guarantee better life choices. A person who does each of these little things each time the choice point comes will find that these choices add up to better choices about what is constitutionally right for him or her. He or she comes to know what their destiny is, who their wife or husband will be, what their mission in life will be. Sorry, let me flip the page. One cannot choose wisely for a life unless he or she dares to listen to himself or herself, his or her own self, at each moment in life, and to say calmly, no, I don't like such and such. Maslow is big on this. You saying, no, I don't like this. No, I don't like that movie. No, I don't like that drink, even if everyone likes it. No, why is this movie supposedly so popular? I don't like it. This is not to be a forceful and fake contrarian. That's to be authentic. So he's not saying the self-actualization is about you saying, I don't like this, I don't want this. It's about having the courage to do so. Because the default for the vast majority of humans is just to nod along with whatever the trend is. So believe it or not, the journey of self-actualization, that profound journey, can start with something as simple as not agreeing with what is in trend today when it comes to popular culture. 6th, self-actualization is not only an end state, but also the process of actualizing one's potentialities at any time, in any amount. I'm not going to read the rest because just Maslow talks about there is no one impressive thing that you can do. There is not one glorious moment that takes you towards self-actualization. If you listen to or watched my previous videos, I talked about him saying how sometimes the journey of self-actualization consists of doing finger exercises for a piano player. So unimpressive, so boring, so mundane. But that's the self-actualization journey. You're training your fingers, doing finger exercises if you're a piano player. So that's what number 6 is about. It's about, and you see again, it's not a practical behavior tip. It's again philosophical outlook on life. Today, a lot of people would call it a mindset shift, mindset change. Just like number 5, if we look back, I kind of read it without giving additional context. Apologies for that, so I will just quickly reflect on it. Number 5 pretty much was summarizing all of these other things and saying that it's about stacking the choices because all of these things add up to greater authenticity, add up to following your destiny and being able to discover what your destiny is. And then number 6 is kind of again reinforcing that attitude and saying these small choices, they add up, as we said in number 5, but here adding that the small activities are usually the ones that we neglect or overlook, such as finger exercises. What is your equivalent of a finger exercise? For me, as someone who wants to be an educator, someone who wants to inspire and teach people and help people, this is the cool part. I'm getting to talk to people, and I know there are going to be people watching and listening. Reading, studying, that's also the cool part for me. It's not always what I want to do in that moment of the day, but it's definitely the cool part. But me trying actually to practice my speaking abilities, it's excruciating. I hate it, to be honest. That's the boring, mundane, unimpressive, because also it's not impressive. It's not impressive. Me doing breathing exercises before hitting record, that's my version of finger exercises. That's a very serious part of my self-actualization journey. Learning to stabilize myself and stabilize my breath before I start speaking. Extremely important part of my day. Extremely important part of my self-actualization journey. So my question for you is, what is your equivalent of finger exercises for a piano player? 7th, peak experiences. Peak experiences, I've talked about them, I've written about them a ton over the years. These are some of the highest moments that a human being can experience, no pun intended. The simplest way for general population, let's put it that way, to explain it is it's a more mystical and more intense version of the flow state. Most people are familiar with the flow state. Well, there is a great overlap between the peak experience as defined by Maslow and the flow state defined by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, but they're not the same. Peak experiences are more mystical, higher states of human consciousness and more intense experiences. What is important about them as part of this list of behaviors leading to self-actualization? Once again, not a practical tip, not a practical step, not a behavior that you can now engage in. There is nothing that you can do right now to get into the peak experience. You can take some psychedelic drugs to stimulate kind of forcefully what would appear to be like a peak experience, but is it if it's artificially produced? Why Maslow puts them here is to point to the need of becoming a person who more frequently experiences, again, not the best phrasing, but who more frequently experiences these peak experiences, or who more frequently reaches peak experiences. How do you become that person? All of what we said right now, and overall becoming the person who moves towards self-actualization. Look at a couple of my previous videos. I pretty much always touch on this topic, how to become a person who more frequently reaches this state of transcendence, effortless action, full immersion, so on and so forth. So 7th is peak experiences, recognizing them as transient moments, recognizing that you cannot just snap your fingers and enter the peak experience, recognizing that you cannot forcefully enter them, but you can very, very much influence the development of your life and yourself as an individual in a direction where these peak experiences are more frequent and you are more open to them. 8, finding out who one is, what he likes or she, what they don't like, what is good for them or bad, means the exposure of psychopathology. It means identifying defenses. And after defenses have been identified, it means finding the courage to give them up. This is painful because defenses are erected against something which is unpleasant. But giving up the defenses is worthwhile. If the psychoanalytic literature has taught us nothing else, it has taught us that repression is not a good way of solving problems. So what is number 8? Number 8 is embarking on a difficult journey of looking what are these psychological defenses that you have erected to protect yourself from past unpleasant experiences, and now these defenses stand as protection, as unnecessary and unhealthy protection from the world, from life itself. Analyzing these defenses, identifying them, and as Maslow says, giving them up, which is painful, which is scary. Some people have to do this through the process of therapy. Some people have defenses that are more easily identifiable, or it's more easy to give them up. But in any case, we could, to express this in the broadest way so that it relates to as many people as possible watching this, number 8 would be about embarking on the journey of getting to know yourself better and getting to know the side of you that has been developed through answering life's difficulties, answering life's pain and suffering, and sometimes even answering or responding to life's trauma that has been imposed on you in some way. So identifying defenses, learning to let them go. It's not always, we have to, especially nowadays when the word trauma is so often used, not everyone is going to discover that they had trauma. Not everyone is going to discover something that takes years of therapy to abandon. For someone, it's going to be a couple of long journaling sessions or a couple of conversations that are enough to really shift their attitude towards certain defenses in their life. So I talked recently in a video about very frequent and common psychological defenses of perfectionism and imposter syndrome. Those are psychological defenses. Maybe some of you are dealing with something more extreme, more severe, more difficult to let go of, but in any case, number 8 is, it's not just about forward movement. It's not just about looking forward. Sometimes we have to look back and or look within and identify things that have been holding us back. The insecurities, the shields and armor that we have put up somewhere in the past that don't serve us anymore. Often when I talk to people who have an inferiority complex for some reason. They needed to compensate for something. They developed this inferiority complex, and what arises out of inferiority complex? Great ambition. So this is not to say that ambition is bad, because it came up mostly out of, not fully, but mostly out of an inferiority complex. However, if that ambition is still years or decades later purely fueled by the inferiority complex, even if the person obviously isn't in an inferior position in their life, in their social standing, what it produces is like you are pressing gas and brake at the same time. This person wants to achieve a lot, but is in constant tension with themselves, which results in procrastination, in again perfectionism, imposter syndrome, which results in them not getting the tasks done, not putting the projects out, not doing now what I'm doing, just putting the video out there, allowing themselves to put the video out there, or put the essay, or put the poem out there, or whatever, the product, but they're holding themselves back. The project is never finished. Whatever they are and whatever they are creating is never good enough to see the light of the world or light of the day. So again, great ambition with great hesitation. Great ambition with great self-imposed pressure. Gas and brake at the same time. I'm just giving you a description of one of examples of how this might look. You identifying this defense and then working both by moving forwards, but also in a constructive manner, looking backwards and figuring out where did this come from, what are the actions and the philosophical outlook that I can actions that I can take, philosophical outlook that I can take on, relationship with myself that I can re-engage with in a way where I'm abandoning these defenses. I can keep my ambition, but it can be fueled by my love for myself, by my love for life, by my passion for creation, rather by this sense of inferiority. Okay, I think that's enough for number 8. Next one, desexualizing. I love this. I love this. This is extremely important. Could be one of the most underrated things. Desexualizing, and the next one, spoiler alert, is it will be re-sexualizing. Yes. Okay. Desexualizing is one of the defenses. Maslow says, let me talk about one defense mechanism that is not mentioned in the psychology textbooks, though it is very important defense mechanism to some youngsters of today. Maslow uses this kind of outdated word, youngsters. He sounds like a grumpy old man, but he wasn't one. He was extremely passionate about the potential of the future generations. It is the defense mechanism of desexualizing. Let me make this easier for you right away. It's cynicism. It's cynicism. That's how we can view it today. It's being too cool to be passionate. Being too cool to see the magic in life. Everything is cringe. Everything that isn't fully cool, it's cringe. People pursuing their passion are cringe. People loving life are cringe. People being able to admire a flower are cringe. Okay, that's desexualizing, removing the sacred component of life, removing it from your view, from your outlook on life, from your philosophical attitude. Maslow says, these youngsters, again, mistrust the possibility of values and virtues. So yeah, everyone is, they're no good people anymore, for example. That's the attitude. They feel themselves swindled or thwarted in their lives. Most of them have, in fact, parents whom they don't respect very much, parents who are quite confused themselves about values and who frequently are simply terrified of their children and never punish them or stop them from doing things that are wrong. Okay, a lot of possible commentary here, but let's stick to something that is relevant for our age. These youngsters have learned to reduce the person to the concrete object and to refuse to see what he or she might be, or refuse to see him or her in their symbolic values, or refuse to see him or her eternally. And here is a question for you. Can you see another person eternally? Can you see another person as a sacred embodiment of what life is? Can you see another person and think, wow, this is magic. This is another life in front of me. This life is sacred. This life is beautiful. This person has potential. Can you do that? Do you ever do that? And I know the excuses coming my way. I am surrounded by terrible people. Okay. Can you look at a tree and be on the verge of crying because of how magical nature is? Can you look at an animal and be in awe of that creature if you're surrounded by terrible people? Our kids have desexualized. By the way, Maslow came up with the word desexualize and resexualize. Our kids, says Maslow, have desexualized sex, for example. Sex is nothing. Nothing. It's a natural thing. And they have made it so natural that it has lost its poetic qualities in many instances. Oh, that's a rough one. Now you could say, oh, Maslow is so conservative, traditional. Oh, is he? Is he? This is not me imposing my values on you. Do what you want. I'm also a human. I'm also a product of the modern age. Without me getting into details, I'm also product of the modern age, and in many ways have lived a lot of my life to this point in this desacralized manner. Can we look at a physical intimacy, a moment of physical intimacy with another person through poetic lens, through I dare even say religious lens, not religious as in I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew, or I'm Muslim, Hindu, whatever, but religious in the sense of this is sacred, what I'm doing right now. Doesn't have to mean it's put in a container and in a box of rules and restrictions of a certain religion. I'm not saying you're married to someone, I'm saying you experience physical intimacy as something that is spiritual, religious, poetic, out of this world. Would be better, right? Than just, okay, here I am, excuse my language right now, but here I am basically masturbating, but instead of using my hand, I'm using another person's body. That's how it happens today, most of the time. Next one, resacralizing. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, to be honest. I never heard these words pronounced, desacralizing and resacralizing. So this is the next one. I think we are at number, what is the number? That would be number, desacralizing was 9, this would be number 10. Resacralizing means being willing once again to see a person under the aspect of eternity, as Spinoza says, or to see him or her in the medieval Christian unitive perception, that is, being able to see the sacred, eternal, symbolic. Now again, this is Maslow talking from his perspective. He says medieval Christian unitive perception, although he mentions Taoism and Buddhism many times throughout his works. This is, again, desacralizing, resacralizing isn't about imposing any religious values on you. He used here an example of medieval Christian unity perception. You use the example that you know of. What is the framework that looks at a person in a sacred, eternal way? The symbolic way. It is to see woman with a capital W and everything which that implies, even when one looks at a particular woman. Okay, so to my fellow man, can you look at a woman with a capital W? This is a woman, this is the ultimate symbol of life. This is the symbol of life-giving. Can you? Can you? Another example, and this might be my favorite example because it's so straightforward. One goes to medical school and dissects a brain. Certainly something is lost if the medical student isn't awed, maybe let's say isn't in awe, although here it says isn't in awe, but without the unitive perception, sees the brain only as one concrete thing. Open to resacralization, one sees a brain as a sacred object, also sees its symbolic values, sees it in its poetic aspects. And I can speak about this because I had a friend 10 years ago who went into medical school, and he was talking to me about his first instance of being in an anatomy class and looking at a real human body being dissected. And he was speaking about it like it was this book. It was an object. It was an object that they were dissecting and looking at parts of it. Now I know that not much would get done if all of us were always in awe. I know we need to reduce that sense of awe a bit in order to move through life, in order to get things done. And I know that maybe you wouldn't want to be operated on by a doctor who is in a constant state of awe that there is a human body in front of him that he gets to operate on. But for that to completely be excluded, for this mechanical approach, again, maybe you want that completely mechanical approach in a moment of operation, but is that person who has completely lost touch with the spiritual, poetic perspective of the human being, is that a person who is moving towards self-actualization? I'm not sure. I wouldn't say so. Maslow wouldn't say so. Resacralization often means an awful lot of corny talk, or today cringe talk. Maslow says very square, the kids would say. The kids today would not say square, they would say cringe. Nevertheless, for the counselor, where the philosophical question about religion and the meaning of life come up, this is an important way of helping the person to move towards self-actualization. So an important way of helping the person move towards self-actualization isn't to impose for the counselor, the philosophical counselor instead of therapist, or the therapist, not to impose their own religious view, not to impose their own religious beliefs. It's to engage in, once again, you have to understand religious in a way broader sense, in the religious conversation of what is sacred to you. Let's rediscover the sacred aspect of life. And this is coming now from someone who doesn't have a strict religious orientation. But I can tell you that I see magic in life, I see sacredness in life, I see beauty in life. And I wasn't always like that. I was, years ago, one of those cynical people. And I thought that I was cool because I was dismissive of everything. Oh, look at this person, being so enthusiastic about life. Oh, cringe. So not cool. So pathetic, so weak. What was that if not a defense mechanism? To protect myself. Why? Because I was, at some previous point, disappointed in life. I didn't want to be disappointed by life once again. So ask yourself, where do you stand? Again, don't look at it as binary, look at it as a spectrum between, the ultimate cynicism of complete desacralization or full resacralization, where every morning you are brought to the verge of tears because of the magic of being alive and being able and being given the opportunity to participate in life. Can you have those moments? Can you have those moments? Can you have at least one moment every day where you say, maybe even speak it out loud or just say it to yourself, I get to participate in this incredible, mysterious experience of human life or life in general. But me as a human, I'm participating in the experience of life in a different way than very different way than a lot of other creatures. Can you have those moments? By the way, this was the conclusion. Let's say this was the last of the mentioned behaviors leading to self-actualization. One thing that I would say, one last thing that Maslow, he talks about resacralizing more. I'm not going to read every single thing that he said, but kind of the summary of these 10 behaviors leading to self-actualization. He says, people selected as self-actualizing subjects, people who fit the criteria of being self-actualizers, go about it in these little ways. They listen to their own voices, they take responsibility, they are honest, and they work hard. So you see, we are now kind of brought back to the ground from this resacralizing. They find out who they are and what they are, not only in terms of their mission in life, but also in terms of the way their feet hurt when they wear such and such a pair of shoes, and whether they do or do not like eggplant. I love this. Whether they do or they not like eggplant, or stay up all night if they drink too much beer. All this is what the real self means. They find their own biological natures, not just psychological and spiritual, which are irreversible or difficult to change. This is a controversial statement that some people will not like, but there is a true nature, there is a true self, claims Maslow, that it's irreversible or extremely difficult to change. And I love that he mentioned eggplant or how your feet hurts when you wear such and such shoes, because it's not just about discovering your destiny, it's about getting to know yourself. And when you meet people who fit the criteria of self-actualization, you will see that they're very confident in saying what food suits them and which food hurts their cognitive performance, not based on what Brian Johnson said, not based on what mommy or daddy said, but based on what they experienced. You will find that those people have strong opinions of what music contributes to their life and what music or what type of entertainment hurts their mind and soul. So once again, it's the small but extremely important things in life, and not just discovering your life mission, which makes you get to know your real self. This is what we are going to conclude with. These were 10 behaviors, quote-unquote behaviors, leading to self-actualization. You can see how We could talk for hours about every single one of these, but if you are left a bit frustrated that we didn't come up with a more practical framework for moving towards self-actualization, I would reflect on the summary that Maslow gave us in the sense of, I'm going to add first, learning how to focus, reclaiming your attention, because he wasn't in a position to talk about it. So learning how to focus, reclaiming your attention so that you can get fully immersed and get closer to discovering your real self. Taking on the responsibility or responsibilities that are in front of you as you move forward on your journey, making the growth choice, being honest, and all of that comes together as getting to know yourself more. And then the cherry on top, but it might as well be a foundation, depending on how you want to look at it, is resacralizing, learning once again to see eternal, sacred, poetic, spiritual, religious elements of life, learning to be in awe at the fact that you're alive, learning to be grateful for the fact that you get to see the trees, the flowers, to hear the birds, learning to look at another person in front of you, whether they're a friend or romantic partner, and just be amazed at the fact that another sacred human life is in front of you that you get to connect with. I don't know if these are practical enough for you, but if you engage in them, I can guarantee that your life will be infinitely greater and you will be moving toward self-actualization, toward the fulfillment of your unique potential. Thank you.